You know, there was a time when I felt like my living room had turned into a miniature battleground. Two kids, two opinions, and a whole lot of shouting over who gets the last slice of pizza or the best spot on the couch. And I'll be honest, I didn't always handle it gracefully. But here's what I've learned after decades of watching little humans test limits. Most of these fights aren't really about the toy, the screen, or even the pizza. They're about power, fairness, and the age-old need to be seen and heard. If you've ever felt your blood pressure spike while your children wrestle over everything from crayons to video games, this video is for you. We're going to dive into why these tussles happen, the hidden psychology behind them, and, most importantly, real, practical ways to stop them from spiraling into full-blown wars. By the end, you'll see that ending these power struggles isn't about enforcing strict rules or winning battles. It's about understanding the dance of sibling dynamics, spotting the triggers, and guiding your children toward cooperation without losing your sanity in the process. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, take a deep breath, and let's untangle the messy, noisy, and sometimes infuriating world of sibling power struggles together. The battlefield. It doesn't take much to turn a quiet afternoon into chaos. 1 minute the living room is peaceful. The next, a high-pitched argument erupts over who sat there first, or that toy is mine. And if you're a parent, you know the scene all too well. Hands on hips, glaring eyes, fists clenched, and voices rising to levels that could rival a rock concert. From the outside, it might look like kids being naughty. But trust me, there's a method to this madness. These little humans are testing boundaries, exploring their independence, and asserting their identity. In developmental psychology, we call this the autonomy versus control stage. Around ages 5 to 12, children begin to recognize themselves as individuals distinct from their siblings and parents. They want to make choices, even over trivial things like the last cookie or which cartoon to watch. And when their choices conflict with another child's, the tug-of-war begins. I remember a classic scene, two children arguing over the same tablet. One insisted they'd been using it longer, while the other cried, "It's my turn." What started as a small disagreement quickly escalated into yelling, stomping, and dramatic accusations of always being unfair. On the surface, it was about the tablet, but underneath, it was about fairness, recognition, and testing limits, the age-old power struggle in miniature. Here's the catch. These tussles aren't just harmless noise. Left unchecked, they can damage relationships, foster resentment, and teach kids that conflict has no resolution except domination or giving up. The real issue isn't the toy or the spot on the couch. It's learning how to navigate disagreements, regulate emotions, and negotiate solutions. And that's where we, the adults, step in. Understanding the why is the first step. Recognizing that children are not trying to be deliberately difficult, but are exercising their growing independence, reframes the battle entirely. You stop reacting out of frustration and start observing patterns. You notice who tends to escalate first, which situations ignite competition, and how small conflicts can snowball. And once you see the battlefield clearly, you're no longer a passive bystander. You become a strategic guide, shaping how these young negotiators learn cooperation, fairness, and emotional control. So before you intervene with rules or punishments, take a moment to watch the dance. Every cry, stomp, or snatch is a clue. Because if you can understand the battlefield, you can start guiding your little warriors toward resolving conflicts without losing your mind, or theirs. Now that we've peeked at the battlefield, let's talk about the triggers. The sparks that ignite these sibling showdowns, because believe me, once you can spot the patterns, half the battle is already won. First, attention is a hot commodity in any household. Children are masters at reading our emotional bank balance. If one child senses that you're more responsive to their sibling, even for a second, it's like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Suddenly, every minor disagreement becomes a bid for attention. It's not selfishness, it's survival of the most noticed. I once watched a simple squabble over crayons spiral into a full-scale argument because one child felt invisible. The fight wasn't about colors at all, it was about being seen. Perceived unfairness is another huge trigger. Kids have a remarkable sense of justice, often far more rigid than adults. When one child believes another is getting more privileges, toys, or praise, it can feel like a personal injustice, and suddenly, minor disagreements explode into dramatic confrontations. Imagine a 9-year-old who's been waiting patiently for game time, watching their sibling jump straight in. You'd think they were being asked to fight a dragon. The sense of violation is real. Then there's jealousy, the quiet undercurrent in many conflicts. Siblings constantly compare themselves. Why does she get better grades? Why does he get the bigger slice? This subtle competition for status or parental approval can transform even innocent activities into battlegrounds, and it's amplified when children are at different developmental stages. A 7-year-old may struggle to articulate feelings, resorting to grabs and screams, while a 12-year-old uses words as weapons, scoring points in verbal sparring. Here's a little nugget from psychology. Children operate on what we call a scarcity mindset. They believe that love, attention, and resources are limited. If one child sees another taking or getting more, it triggers immediate competition, not out of malice, but out of genuine fear of missing out. Recognizing this mindset is a game changer. Once you understand that fights often stem from fear of scarcity, you stop treating the surface conflict as the real enemy. The real work is helping children feel secure, valued, and fairly treated. Finally, don't underestimate the impact of your own reactions. Kids are expert mirrors. If you lose your cool, take sides, or react inconsistently, you fuel the fire. They learn quickly. Raise your voice, stomp your feet, and get attention. Conversely, calm, consistent, and fair responses teach them conflict resolution by example. So spotting the triggers isn't just about watching who fights or what toy is involved. It's about observing patterns, who escalates first, what situations spark jealousy, when attention imbalances occur, and how emotional needs manifest as conflict. Once you can map these patterns, you're no longer fumbling in the dark. You know the sparks before the fire, and that knowledge gives you the power to guide, intervene, and diffuse without turning every day into a war zone. Now that we know why these tussles happen and what sets them off, let's talk about the real magic. De-escalation in the moment. Because let's face it, nothing tests your patience quite like two children in full combat mode over a single toy. But here's the truth. How you respond in those first critical minutes can either blow up the conflict or turn it into a learning moment. Step 1. Stay calm. I know, easier said than done, but children are expert emotional sponges. If you rush in yelling or take sides, the fight escalates, and suddenly you're refereeing a boxing match instead of guiding two young humans. Take a breath, lower your voice, and approach with measured authority. Your calm becomes a cue that the situation is under control. Step 2. Acknowledge feelings, not just the facts. I see you're frustrated that your brother grabbed the tablet, or I understand you're upset you didn't get the first slice. Simple statements like these validate emotions without giving in to demands. Children often fight because they feel unheard. Once you recognize their feelings, the tension drops significantly. Step 3. Offer choices. Giving children some control in the resolution reduces power struggles. Instead of saying, "Stop fighting," try, "Who wants to go first, and how long will each of you play?" This shifts the focus from conflict to cooperation. They begin to negotiate, and you step back from being the ultimate decision maker. Step 4. Use "I feel" statements to model healthy expression. For example, calmly saying, "I feel upset when shouting happens in the living room because it's hard for me to help either of you," teaches children a more constructive way to communicate. They learn early that expressing emotions doesn't mean lashing out. Step 5. Set immediate, fair consequences if necessary. If a child refuses to cooperate after repeated calm interventions, a short, predictable consequence works better than long lectures. The key is consistency. Children must see that rules apply equally, regardless of mood or favoritism. Let me give you a scene from my own experience. Two children were wrestling over a tablet. I stepped in, knelt to their level, and said, "I see both of you want to play. Let's figure out a solution." I acknowledged each child's feelings, suggested a timer for turns, and let them decide the order. Within minutes, the screaming faded into negotiation, and both were actually smiling by the end. The battle turned into a teachable moment because I stayed calm, validated, and guided them toward their own resolution. Remember, the goal isn't to stop conflict entirely. That's impossible. The goal is to guide children through it safely, teaching them emotional regulation, negotiation, and problem-solving. These real-time strategies, though simple, lay the groundwork for children to manage disagreements independently in the future. And if you can master this without losing your voice or your sanity, you're already winning half the war. Once the immediate fight is under control, the next step is building a system that prevents future battles before they even start. Think of it as fortifying the playground so that conflicts become less about survival and more about negotiation. Without structure, children are left to navigate a chaotic environment where every interaction feels like a power test. And trust me, chaos is exhausting, for them and for you. The first principle is predictability. Children thrive on knowing what to expect. Simple routines, like designated playtimes, clear turn-taking, and established rules for shared spaces, create a sense of security. When kids know the tablet is available from 4 to 4:30 and each child gets equal turns, there's less room for the "he always gets more" arguments. Predictability reduces the need to constantly fight for control. Consistency is just as important. If rules or consequences change depending on your mood or the day, children quickly learn to test limits. They notice when yelling gets results or when whining earns extra time. Consistent enforcement of rules teaches them that fairness is not situational. It's the standard. For instance, if screen time ends when the timer goes off, it should always end. No exceptions, no negotiations, no loopholes. Over time, this consistency reduces the intensity and frequency of power struggles. Another key element is giving clear, age-appropriate responsibilities. Chores, shared tasks, or rotating privileges give children a sense of ownership while teaching cooperation. I remember a small experiment. Each child had a day to choose the family game or plan a small activity. Not only did they learn to take turns leading, but the fights over decision-making diminished significantly. They were practicing negotiation, compromise, and leadership, all under structured conditions that didn't threaten anyone's sense of fairness. Separate spaces also help. Even in a small home, giving children areas for independent play or personal belongings reduces friction. A designated spot for each child's toys, art supplies, or books prevents the classic "you touched my stuff" disputes. It's not about creating isolation. It's about reducing unnecessary triggers while still encouraging shared experiences in communal areas. Finally, involve children in rulemaking when appropriate. Simple discussions about what's fair, how to share, and what behaviors are unacceptable give them a sense of participation. Children are far more likely to follow rules they helped create. It also subtly teaches negotiation and empathy. They see the perspectives of their siblings and learn that compromise is part of everyday life. Long-term boundaries aren't just about stopping fights. They're about teaching skills for life: emotional regulation, cooperation, and respect for others. The structure you set today becomes the foundation for children to handle disputes independently tomorrow. And the best part? Fewer power struggles mean a calmer, more predictable household, and a parent who isn't constantly refereeing battles. Once you've set the rules and built the structure, the next frontier is turning rivalry into teamwork. Because let's be honest, children will argue. It's inevitable. But they can also learn to cooperate, support each other, and even enjoy doing so if we guide them the right way. Start by highlighting collaboration over competition. Praise teamwork, shared problem-solving, and moments when children help each other. A simple acknowledgement. "I noticed how you both work together to clean up the art supplies," reinforces positive behavior far more effectively than criticism for fighting. Children are motivated by recognition. They want to earn your attention for cooperation as much as they did for arguing. Games and shared projects are another goldmine. Whether it's building a Lego city, cooking a simple recipe, or completing a small household task. These activities encourage children to negotiate roles, communicate clearly, and handle minor conflicts constructively. I once saw two children who couldn't agree on a single puzzle piece suddenly laugh and strategize when faced with a joint Lego challenge. The tension melted, replaced by teamwork and genuine satisfaction in a shared achievement. These moments are not just fun, they're practice in social skills that will serve them for life. Introduce team-oriented incentives. Rewarding cooperative behavior with small, achievable goals teaches children that working together has tangible benefits. For example, if siblings complete a collaborative chore or game without fighting, they might earn an extra story at bedtime or a fun activity on the weekend. It doesn't have to be extravagant. The goal is to make cooperation visible and rewarding. Model cooperation yourself. Children learn more from observation than lectures. When they see you negotiating, compromising, or solving problems calmly with others, they absorb those behaviors. Simple gestures, like asking for input when planning family meals, sharing responsibilities with your partner, or calmly resolving a disagreement in front of them, teach that collaboration isn't just a rule, it's a way of life. And finally, make space for reflection and discussion. Encourage children to talk about what went right, what went wrong, and how they could handle situations differently next time. Even a 5-minute conversation at the end of the day can help them internalize lessons from conflicts and cooperative experiences alike. This reflective practice builds empathy, emotional intelligence, and a sense of fairness that reduces the likelihood of future battles. The beauty of this approach is that it transforms the energy that would normally fuel fights into connection. Children learn that they can influence outcomes not through yelling, grabbing, or tattling, but through cooperation, communication, and mutual respect. Power struggles become less about winning and more about learning how to navigate relationships, and that's a lesson that sticks long after the Lego pieces are put away. So, let's recap. Power struggles among children aren't about being bad. They're about autonomy, fairness, and learning how to navigate relationships. Understanding the triggers, staying calm in the heat of conflict, setting consistent boundaries, and fostering cooperation can turn constant battles into opportunities for growth. Structured routines, predictable rules, and team-based activities teach children negotiation, empathy, and problem-solving skills that last a lifetime. I want to hear from you. What's the most memorable sibling squabble you've faced, and how did you handle it? Share in the comments. I read them, and sometimes I even respond personally. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Together, we can make parenting less about refereeing fights and more about guiding little humans toward cooperation, respect, and lifelong emotional intelligence.